I want to tell you a little bit about our program. I'm from the capital city, and we've had a program for about 5 years. About 60 years ago now, our mayor was watching a show. I wonder if we could do it here in Lake Havasu. So a couple weeks later, he came to me and he said, hey Judge, what do you think about a Veterans Treatment Court? And what I heard was, hey Judge, if you want to keep your job, you better get a Veterans Treatment Court started. What I will tell you is that having the support of the city, having the support of the local government is absolutely, has been key for us in being successful, and having our mayor be that supportive has been something that has really put our program over the top on a lot of different things. In fact, I brought our mayor with us tonight, and he's going to talk with us a little bit and let us know his perspective of veterans courts. Or not. Oh, there it is.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Nexon, and I am the mayor of Lake Havasu City. I wish I could be with you in person today, but I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to you on video regarding starting a rural veterans treatment court. So some of you may be asking, where is Lake Havasu City? We are in northwest Arizona on the Colorado River. We are 150 miles from Las Vegas, 200 miles from Phoenix, and roughly 60 miles away from our nearest neighboring city. So as you can see, we are very isolated. So how did the Lake Havasu City Veterans Treatment Court, or VTC, get started? Well, it did not happen overnight. It all got started when I was watching a special on 60 Minutes regarding a VTC. I was impressed by the process and impact on the veterans that seized the opportunity to enter the VTC. I was also impressed by the judge, who happened to be a veteran. Knowing that Judge Kalali is a veteran, I approached him on the concept of a VTC. He was all for the idea, but I quickly learned that for reasons I will explain shortly, there is an advantage to having the champion be a committed local elected leader. I will admit to you that you must be persistent. There will be roadblocks. Be prepared to learn and understand how a VTC works and the benefits to veterans and to your community. You will spend a lot of time explaining why it is important, especially to CAVE people. CAVE, Citizens Against Virtually Everything. You will hear from CAVE people that we don't have the budget or this idea is simply a waste of money. Some will say it is special treatment, so be prepared to explain how this court is more difficult for veterans than just doing the time. As you will hear shortly, it is a 6 to 18-month process to graduate. Some people, who might include prosecutors, judges, and elected officials, just want to fine and sentence the veteran. You have heard it before. If they do the crime, they should do the time. So I started the pursuit of a VTC by spending time with my city council. I visited the Superior Court presiding judge to ask for support, and I met with other prominent elected officials in an effort to garner support. But again, often people were lukewarm to the idea. I quickly learned that most of the objections stemmed from not understanding the VTC. So to increase my knowledge, I spent time at other VTCs. We went to a new court in Phoenix, and we also met with General Maxson for his guidance. One of the biggest pushbacks you will hear is the budget. Yes, there are upfront costs. For instance, we added a clerk specifically for the VTC. But remember, these veterans are already in the system. However, I admit they will be seen more often than in a typical court. The goal is to help veterans become productive members of society as they were before entering military service. This is about building and rebuilding self-esteem, and that takes time. Let's be honest, if they are out of the court system, working, enjoying life, now they are adding to the tax base and ultimately will reduce future court costs. But if all else fails, you have to remind the naysayers, the hell with the budget, and let's do what is right. As mentioned earlier, having a committed local elected leader has its advantages. I wasn't afraid to use the bully pulpit, and for those elected officials in the audience, I encourage you to do the same. For instance, when I spoke at a veterans gathering, I added the idea of a VTC to my speeches. I reached out to veterans groups one-on-one. The veterans organizations will be instrumental in making your VTC happen. After a while, the veterans groups and other people in the community started talking about a VTC and wondering when it can start. I also wasn't afraid to use elections to my benefit. When I was asked to give my endorsement to a candidate, I insisted that they help me promote the VTC. In some cases, I had to make adversaries to the VTC concept uncomfortable by placing them in a position to publicly speak against the VTC, which they could not do. No way would they argue against the VTC and say no to veterans. So maybe I did not always receive a yes, but those who would not publicly support the VTC would just choose to step aside, and the rest is history. Thank you so much for listening.
You know, I think that sums it all up well, and I probably should stop right here, but I'm not going to because I'm a judge and like to talk. So I'm going to go on a little bit longer. One of the things that I like to provide to people, especially those who control budgets, is some of the reasoning behind why we might want to do this. One of the things that happens in city councils and other government organizations is that we look from year to year, and we're only looking a year ahead at, how will this affect next year's budget? We don't look far enough out to really take into account all of the effects that it can have. For a veterans treatment court, for every $7 spent in regular court, that's $2 spent in a veterans treatment court or in a treatment court. Now that's actually direct costs. If you take into account indirect costs, it's for every $27 spent in regular court, you spend $1 in a treatment court. And so if you're looking at it just from that point of view, it makes a lot of sense to say, if we're going to do something, let's do it right. And what's the end effect on that? For us, since 2013, we've had about almost $100,000 in saving jail costs alone that we haven't had because our veterans participate in our program, and typically in DUIs, they will plead down to the A1 charge, and it'll only be 24 hours rather than the 30 or 45 days. But we keep them in the program anywhere from 7 months to a year and a half, up to 3 years. Sometimes our last graduate, our 100th graduate, was in our program for 3 years, and it took her that long to figure things out, but she's doing great now. Something that people will always talk about, and probably the most important thing when you're talking about effectiveness, is the recidivism rate. And that means how often do they come back into the legal system. In regular court, it's 70 to 80% of the time. So if we want somebody to stay in the legal system, let's do what we're doing right now, because we're doing really well at keeping them in the legal system. But if not, we might want to think about doing something different. In veterans treatment courts, it's typically somewhere between 20 and 30%. We've had 100 graduates in our program so far over 5 years, and our recidivism rate is less than 5%. So, if you look at it in those numbers, something we're doing is right, and we're doing it differently maybe than it has been done in the past, but we're doing it the right way. Some of the challenges that we had in setting it up as a limited VA presence, we're, depending on who's driving and how fast they're driving, anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 hours away from the closest VA. We had off and on a VJO. Our problem was our VJO wasn't local, and so typically what would end up happening is if they would call by telephone, and we would be on the phone with them, and it worked as best as it could, but it didn't always work the way that we needed it to work, so we had to deal with those kind of problems. Limited resources, our veterans organizations at the time were fragmented, and then limited program funding, and those are some of the problems that we had when we first started. When we first started our program, we started with one veteran, and I will tell you that I swore to everybody that I would talk with that we would never have more than 5 to 10 veterans in our program at any given time. I was certain of it. I went to the bank on it and I said, we'll never have more than 5 to 10 veterans in our program. Well, we started with one, and I was right for about 3 months. And then about 3 months we got 5, about 6 months we got 10, about 10 months we were up to 20, 2 years in we were at 30, 3 years in, we were at 50. We currently have 70-something in our program, more than 70, 72, and I think we have 10 or 12 that are in the pipeline right now trying to decide if that's going to be right for them. And we don't know what our ceiling is yet. We keep thinking we have it, and then we keep getting more and more. So I would tell you that, you know, and I've heard this already, but if you build it, they will come. The veterans are there, they need our help. The Veterans Treatment Court program, the idea again with all treatment court programs is a little more effort up front will produce a better result on the back end. And I think that that's kind of what has happened with us and why we've had the success that we've had. Going on to the next slide, because I know that I'm supposed to only go 10 to 15 minutes, and you know, having judges only speak for 10 to 15 minutes is like herding cats, and I'm hoping that we can make that happen, but I have 5 more minutes. Oh, I'm doing great. I might even get to tell a story or two. One of the things that I wanted to tell you folks about that is a reason why I think we've been as successful as we have is that at the same time that we started our program, we realized that we didn't have the resources maybe that another city might have, or in a bigger city there might be better resources or more resources, and we knew we didn't have that, and so we knew that we had to band together as a community to try and figure out what resources we have and then to utilize those to the best of our ability and as effectively and efficiently as possible. So for those of you who know Polynesians, Hawaiians, we like food. And we know that everything kind of revolves around food. So I had the great idea is that if I would tell people that I would feed them once a month, I hoped that they would keep coming back. And so we started right at the same time, about 5 years ago, our Veterans Resource Team to go along, coincide with our Veterans Treatment Court. And what we did is we met once a month, and I always told them that I would feed them. And I think what got them was my fried rice. We have a secret family fried rice recipe that we'll share with you if you come up and visit us in Lake Havasu and come to one of our Veterans Resource Team meetings. And we fed them every month. And we started with 3 organizations. I think the Marine Corp League was there, the DAV was there, maybe 3 or 4 organizations. And I think when we first started, they thought we were crazy. You know, what is this thing and why are these people trying to do this? But we kept feeding them, so they kept coming back. It was always free food. We started with 4, and we just added another 2 or 3, and this is what our Veterans Resource Team looks like now. We have over 40 members of our Veterans Resource Team that meet regularly. We meet monthly and talk about our veterans and what we can do to assist them, both the veterans that are in the program and the veterans that aren't in the program. What I like to use as a model is that the court system is the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. And by the time they fall over the cliff, they land in the court system. We know that when people come into the court system, there's some crisis in their life. That's why they're in the system. And so we do the best we can as an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. But what we really want to do is push the resources back on top of the cliff so that the veterans never get close to it. And so if they never get close to the cliff, then we're doing our job, and we have healthy veterans that never get into that crisis, or that when they do get into that crisis, they're able to deal with that because they have support. And so we've really been successful in developing our Veterans Resource Team to really address all of those issues. And it started with veterans-only organizations, and now we have veteran-friendly organizations and non-veterans organizations, and really everybody wants to be a part of it because it's a neat experience, and it really gives everybody the opportunity to come together and to share. And in fact, I think based on what we've been doing in our Veterans Resource Team, we're going to now have local stand-downs, mini stand-downs in each of our cities up in Mojave County, rather than having a big stand-down, because of the success that we've had in our local stand-downs that we've been doing. And so I think, you know, really key is getting the community on board, both the political community as well as the organizations, as well as the community itself. And I think we've been very, very lucky at that, but worked very hard. And I made a lot of fried rice over the years to get people to come and be involved in our program. I wanted to end just really quickly. We just had our 100th graduate. She's been in our program for 3 years. She's been in the court system for 30. She's been on felony probation for 20. She's been addicted to meth for 25 years. She hasn't had a driver's license in 17. She was All of the officers knew her, and they knew that at least once a week they would be going to her house. Hers was the flop house. Everybody knew that she would always have drugs, or that they could go and do drugs there, and so that's where they would always go. We started her in our program 3 years ago, and we worked with her, and I can tell you, I mean, it was like a roller coaster. It was up and down and up and down, but the trajectory was up. And she finally graduated. She got her license back the first time in 17 years. She has a job. She's now making sure other veterans are staying the course. She is in a new house, doing really well. It's just been an absolute success. And one of the things that I think is really telling is that about 3 months ago, one of the police officers that knew her well saw her, the jail commander there, and asked him about her and said, "Is she still alive?" And I think that is amazing, because he had not seen her in a year and a half, because they had not had to go to her house. And I think that in and of itself, and I can tell you that's one of 100 stories that I have to tell you about the changes that have occurred in each of these veterans' lives and where they are now versus where they were before. And I can tell you that you know, it has saved their lives. Really quickly, we have another veteran that was drinking a gallon of alcohol a day for about 40 years. When he first came into the program, I couldn't even require him not to consume alcohol, because if I did, it would probably kill him. And so it took us about 2 months, 3 months to wean him off the alcohol. He has been sober now. It will be a year in a month. He's been sober. He stayed sober through the death of his wife. And just an amazing experience. Just the change in him. His eyes, when he first came into the program, his eyes were black, just dark black. He has the clearest blue eyes, just these blue eyes that will penetrate you. And I didn't know that until about 5 months into the program. And he's amazing. He's just made such a change, and he was one of our graduates this last time. And so, you know, I will tell you that even if you only have one of those stories, any time and effort and energy and money that you put into this is absolutely worth it. But I will tell you that you will have literally hundreds of those stories. Hundreds of veterans who deserve what we can give them. When they signed on that dotted line, even if they were never called to give their life, there was that chance, there was that opportunity that they might have to do that. And so whatever we can do to help them, I say let's do. So with that, that looks like that's my time up, and thank you very much. I look forward to talking with you folks more, and if you have any questions at the end, to answer those questions.
Thank you so much, Judge.